Thanks for joining us again and for sticking with us. Nigeria Air. Well, the federal government has approved the year 2022 as next year as the official date for the commencement of the operations of a much talked about national carrier in the aviation industry in Nigeria, Nigeria Air. And we have had quite a number of attempts at jump-starting it. Of course, you would remember there was I call it a soft launch in 2018 where the logo of Nigeria Air was launched outside the country. It was in South Africa or so at the time. And then there are many people, of course. So last week, the Minister of Aviation, Senator Hadi Sirika, announced that the national carrier, Nigeria Air, is expected to take off in April 2022. That's barely 5 months away. April is the 4th month in the year, and we're in the early days of December. So many issues, so many questions, and a lot of conversations around this. Two gentlemen join us this morning. Daniel Young is an aviation consultant. He's here with us in the studio. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And we also have Chris Alegbe, who is an aviation expert as well. He joins us in our Abuja studio. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Yes, but let me begin with you, Mr. Young. How optimistic are you about Nigeria Air?
Well, it's a brilliant idea. I have challenges with the execution of the idea.
Okay.
Between conception and delivery, there's a gap. And the gap that has not been blocked up to now is what is giving us cause for concern.
What are some of these gaps?
The procedures for setting up an airline that is built to start operation by 4 months plus requires that by now we should be seeing some level of operation readiness on the part of the airline. That's one. Two, we have issues with the composition because we are told that federal government owns 5% of the total package, 46% to Nigerians, and 45% to investors, foreign partners. Now, if you look at that, 5%, that brings us to the fact that we should then be asking how have they been able to compose or constitute the remaining 45%? If you claim that the 45% goes to Nigerians, was there any meeting or did they go to the stock market or was there ever an announcement saying Nigerians who are interested in owning shares here should indicate interest?
Okay.
Now, if that was not done, then it definitely would then mean that the people who form part of this 45% were handpicked and therefore does not show a composite coloration of what makes it fully Nigerian. And so if we are saying 45%, how were they chosen? 5%, how did we arrive at the 5% as government interest in the composition? So if you look at the entire structure, there is a challenge that is begging for questions or for answers. And that's where we are.
Well, let me take it from there to Mr. Aligbe in our Abuja studio. What are your opening thoughts on this Nigeria Air project? He has raised, or Mr. Young has raised some issues. Do you have issues with it, or you are much more optimistic than Mr. Young?
Well, I am very optimistic. I know Dr. Young did say he's not optimistic, but he's talking about processes. So I think both of us are optimistic. But first and foremost, the issues about the composition. The airline hasn't got the stage of procurement. It's at the point of procurement that that you can now advertise and call people who are interested in investing. All that it shows is that Nigerians, you have an allocation of 45 or 46%. Yeah, 46%. When this headline, when the time for procurement comes up, this is what you'll be investing. This percentage is what you will acquire. The one that is clear is government 5%. Even the 49% for foreign technical partner, technical investor, is there. No one has been penciled down. So the question of people have been selected does not arise, because you cannot select until you go through the procurement process. And the procurement process is guided by the terms, the condition of our ICRC. So that's the next stage. From all I know, the next stage is in the stage of procurement. That's one. And like you said, yes, people are worried. People are worried they are not seeing something on ground. But I also know that so much is going, because it is not what everything that you're doing you put out there. I don't say today I'm going to visit this, or tomorrow I'm going to visit this person. So to that extent, those who say they've not seen anything on ground, they are correct. But that does not presuppose that nothing is being done. That's putting that aside. But I'm happy that we are talking about this, because most people who have criticized this thing criticize it from the point that national carrier is anachronistic. They are correct when they say national carrier is anachronistic, because they are looking at it from the old concept, where a national carrier is an airline wholly owned by the government. No, is not alloyed by any private investor or private equity, like the liquidated Nigeria Airways, like Ethiopian Airline, like South African Airways. All these are national carriers in the old concept, like Emirates, like Qatar Airways. They are all national carriers in the old concept. But the concept has since shifted. What we are talking about today is a national flag carrier. Many people don't know, they told about European Airlines. Air France, the French government still owns equity in Air France, up to 19% at the last count. And Air France has bought into KLM, in which case government equity is there. That's why these things are old, these equities are old for purposes of sovereign coverage. That's the situation. So those who criticize national carrier of the old concept, they are absolutely correct. No nation, Nigeria should not try that, because that was Nigeria Airways. But what is being floated today is not national carrier in that genre. Is a national flag carrier. Is a new concept. Is a concept
is that also reason
driving the process?
My apologies for butting in. Is that also reason for, okay, maybe I should put it this way. There are part of those who are criticizing are also looking at the unrealistic, or how unrealistic the April 2022 date is, because the first question they're asking is around AOC. Yes, the AOC is something that is granted by the state, by the country concerned, but then it has to be listed on the International Aviation Industry Database, and that, if fast-tracked, is supposed to take something in the region of 12 months at the minimum. So in that regard, for those who have spoken around it, is that to say that the takeoff date that is being proposed by the aviation minister is a technical takeoff date or operational takeoff date?
Well, I can't speak precisely for the minister, because I don't work for him. But all that I need to say is that NCAA issues AOC. NCAA is fully aware of the conditions precedent for issuing AOC. At helm of NCA, in the past, NCA used to had issued AOC once to a non-existent airline, which ICAO frowned very much at. But the person at the helm of affairs of NCAA came from ICAO. He sat in ICAO, so in his fingertips are the rules. So I do not think that under all circumstances that they will truncate or jump the process. That's to the extent I will say. But I think that so much is being done. That's what I know. I cannot tell you this or that. But I want to tell you that NCAA, as constituted today, as headed by today, but Captain Nuhu is at home with all ICAO regulations. I will not jump any under all circumstances. Because that will put us backward from the height we have attained globally as an aviation industry, as an aviation regulator of note.
So essentially you're saying that what? The date is realistic, the date is unrealistic, or it's a technical takeoff, or it's an operational takeoff?
No, I've not said it's unrealistic. I've not said it's unrealistic. I've not said it's a technical takeoff. Like I said, I don't work for the minister, so I cannot say precisely what is. All that I'm saying is that it is possible, because I know so much is going on, but I also know that NCAA is aware of what is going on, being an agency of government, and there's no question that it takes about 12 months. Who is saying that? An AOC can take 2 years, depending on how prepared you are. It can take by far less than that, depending on how prepared you are.
So do you think we are prepared?
So there's no standard time.
Mr. Aligbe, do you think we are prepared for Nigeria Air? Do you think we are fully prepared for takeoff? Or we will be fully prepared by April 2022?
Let me tell you the source of my confidence. The source of my confidence is that you have an industry fellow as a minister. The source of my confidence is that I saw none of us believed that Abuja runway could be ready when it was ready. When the minister said it would be ready at this time, we thought it was fooling Nigerians, but point blank, it was ready. We didn't believe that Enugu Airport, in sight of COVID Airport, would be ready as the time he said it would be ready. It was ready, point blank, even a day before he gave. So, when you look at somebody's pedigree, you can say, if he says this, he knows what he's talking about. I am not saying it's foolproof, but I'm using what has happened in the past. Since I don't work for him, I don't work with him, and using what he has done in the past as an evidence of that's the source of my confidence, source of my optimism.
Okay. Dr. Young.
Yeah. Well, I must say that Mr. Aligbe's confidence is a bit misplaced, because what he has just demonstrated to me here now is that he has not studied the presentation in Fabro. The procurement process, in fact, when you're talking about PPP arrangement, is all about alternative financing. Instead of government spending her money, government is looking towards private partners who will finance the process. Now, if he's familiar with the document, he will see that part of what the minister presented to the international community is that these aircrafts and what the equipment that they will require to make this effective will be provided using federal government guarantee. Now the question is, if we are going to procure the equipment using sovereign guarantee, what is the private sector participant bringing to the table? Because in terms of risk allocation, financing is supposed to come from the private sector. Whereas funding, which means that because the person is going to amortize his funds through tickets bought, user charges, assuming the investor is putting 1 billion naira as his finance to his own commitment to the project, it means that when you and I buy tickets, we fund that money, and he is able to amortize his investment after a time. Now, looking at the document by ICRC modified in 2017 as against the 2008 National Policy on PPP and ICRC Act, you will discover that there's a new introduction called value gap funding, meaning that government will bring money to inject into a process that an asset it intends to unbundle. Now, the question is, if government is not interested in being part of business, because Mr. Chris, I've heard him say over time that government has no business in business. And I agree with him on this score. Because if government has no business in business and government is trying to unbundle the airports, why is government then guaranteeing the purchase of aircrafts? Why is government investing more than the private sector participant in terms of offering guarantees for the aircraft that will be used for these national carriers?
Perhaps because government has 5%.
5% is finder's fee, my friend. It's not even up to agency fee. You know, there's no way you can put 5% when you are putting down more than 90% of the capital required and walking away with 5%. Now, there is an objective in government document proposing value for money. It's called VFM, value for money component of every investment that government wants to unbundle. That means that government is looking at being able to get value in terms of what the person is proposing to bring on the table. And again, the value for money component means that more Nigerians will be employed. It means that the business that you are setting up will become a hub that will lead to several spin-offs that other business will derive from. Now, what we are looking at, when I say that is not possible, is because if government is coming into the arena with 3 aircrafts, it means it is neither a legacy airline or a high-profile airline, because they can't even compete with those ones that have over 100 and something aircrafts. Why is government attempting to come into the business arena, whereas we have people who are playing there already? There is nothing wrong with making Air Peace or any other airline that is doing very well a flag carrier. Why do we have to spend billions of naira trying to repeat other people's mistakes?
Oh, do you know that how is that going to happen when it's already an institution on its own? It's owned by a particular individual. How can that be?
No. At a time in this country, banks used to be owned by individuals. It took one man coming up to say, we can't allow this. Why don't we open the market so that other people can become part investors? So that was when the consolidation of banks happened. What we're having today is that when airlines have problem with finance, they close. AMCON comes in. But if you open it in such a way that individuals who are interested in the performance of an airline can say, well, here is my 15 naira. Whenever you have cash problem, you go to the stock market, you generate money, because you know you have individuals who are not who are Nigerians investing in that through their shares. It's no longer going to be difficult for you to fund an airline as we are having it today. Most airlines are going through a lot because they are funded by individuals.
Speak to the aspect of the national carrier element that he spoke about earlier, Dr.
The national carrier.
Just a second. When he said, you know, that it's the old model that people are concerned about, that the new model is where the government just owns equity.
But what is the difference between the nuance? Is almost the same. That's that you can't talk about old model here and new model in this regard. One, because if you look at the composition of this new island, it failed from the start. Because you're looking at it, the presentation is that you are going to hire aircrafts. I've never had that term in aviation. We use lease, not hire. But I heard the honorable minister say that they are going to start with hired aircrafts. Well, I'm telling you something here. I have failed to see the business model, because there's no business model called traditional and modern aircraft business model, as it's trying to tell us now. The old Nigerian Airways model and the new model. We have 3 models, in fact 5 models in airline business. We have the low-cost airline, and we have the full-service airline, and we have legacy airlines. We have all regionals and the rest. But I mean, if you are talking about Nigeria owning an aircraft, an airline, you should be looking at the full-service airline. You are starting a full service airline. You are looking at competing with people who are already on ground. You are looking at competing with the likes of Emirates and the rest of them. Of course, you have to start from scratch. But our contention here is that due diligence has not been done in terms of being able to follow an open scheme where everyone will follow the timelines.
Well, talking about timelines, he said that the timeline you model, of course, you heard him talk about the AOC, for instance.
Yes.
That, look, it can be speeded up, and he is very sure that the NCAA, which is the one to issue the AOC, well, they're not going to jump the gun, but then there is no rule that says it must be up to 2 years or even 12 months.
Now, AOCs are acquired and can also be bought or leased. Bought in the sense that someone who has an existing airline, who had an airline that is no longer operating, might decide to cede his own to someone else, and you do regularize the documents. You can also lease. Do you understand? Now, if we acquire an airline, you naturally take over whatever assets and liability that they own. Now, it is possible, because I'm looking at it, I have not seen how it's going to play out, except another airline is going to concede to this one, Nigerian Air. If it's not that way, I do not see the possibility of having this thing, pan out in less than 4 months. It's not going to work.
Well, you referenced AMCON the other time.
Yes.
And we know that AMCON already has taken ownership of two airlines in this country.
That's a bogus dream. How can they take over? Why were they there in the first place? Arik had a problem. AMCON came in to help stabilize. I bought over their bills, bought over the loans they were owing. At the time, it was 300 and something billion, I was told, or I read in papers. Now, 300 and something billion that Arik owned. Now, AMCON came in, claimed that they injected another 360 something billion. Now, AMCON met Arik with 17 aircrafts on ground, serviceable, functional airline. Left Arik trying to unbundle Arik now with less than 3 aircrafts, all borrowed. Has anything changed?
Okay, let me ask Mr. Ligwe. There are those who have talked about the AMCON element of this conversation. Do you see that as a possibility? Maybe that's what government is looking at, and consequently trying to speed up the process as a result?
Well, it's pretty unfortunate that one has to talk about AMCON. My position about AMCON is known right from the one AMCON entered into the airline industry to take over Arik and Aero. I told them that they were undertakers and they were going to run the airlines down because they had no scintilla of knowledge about airline management. And that is what that day, the time I said it, they quarreled with me. I kept quiet. What has happened? They have run Arik aground, which is so sad. And what they are trying to do now, set up a new airline out of the ashes of what they have run down. That is honestly a despicable adventurism. That's what they are going into. And that airline they want to set up, failure is a foregone conclusion. You took up, like Dr. Young said, airline with operational, up to 10, 12 operational aircraft. You run it down to ground to 3. And you now want to use those 3 to start a new airline. You have increased the debt of Arik more than it was when you took it over. So what have you paid? You took it over to pay the debts. How much have you paid? Who have you paid? I think I don't want to talk about AMCON because when you talk about it, I get emotional because in this country we are being taken for a ride. AMCON has no business whatsoever staying in the aviation sector. It should return Arik to the original owners because it has done worse than the original owners of Arik. Having said that, I say, my brother Dr. Young, I like that pedagogic approach. Oh, this is this, if this is this, if this is that, if this is that. The gap is not there. Let me tell you, ICRC, in the minister's office, in order to make sure that things are going on well, minister asked ICRC to post an efficient officer. to Aviation Ministry in order to help in all the procedures that are doing. So sitting where you are, you're looking at oh, what happened in Farnborough, what happened in here. Fine, it's good like a lecture in a classroom, but you are not on ground, and that's the issue. So we are criticizing from what we know. It's good, it'll be a good lecture, but your students, when they leave class, they will come to the ground and meet what is on the ground. I am saying precisely that we are just gesticulating. That's what we are doing. But the fact of the matter is for us to know, one, the agencies that are handling this in are on ground. There are agencies within the ministry, particularly NCAA. And I said, I have so much confidence in NCAA because Captain Nuhu is aware of ICAO requirements. Ginard, who is deployed to the office of the Ministry of Aviation, is a senior staff of ICRC to make sure that the processes are properly guided. It's only what we need to do is for us to find out what is happening, to know before we begin to address the criticism. And if you say there's no difference between the old concept and the new concept, I will tell you precisely why I say you should look at it. British Airways was a national carrier fully owned by the British government until Thatcher decided to begin to sell it off and appointed Lord King and Colin Marshall to handle that. Other airlines, after 10 years, we started towards the close of the 80s. And then by 2000, we were in Sydney, IATA, International Air Transport Association, when they reviewed the whole idea of seeding out, privatizing airlines. And they came to the conclusion that full privatization is not a sine qua non for profitability and for success. That is why the Australian government took back some of the shares of Virgin Australia, which was set up initially by Branson. That's the situation. So there's been some transcendental processes that has come up that you need to sit back and look at. Why after 30 years since privatization started, the French government is still holding equity in Air France? Why? So there are things we should look at, we should see, rather than picking up in the air. Yes, classroom studies are excellent, Dr. Young, I agree. But when you leave the classroom, you meet the stark reality on the ground.
Mr.
And you
meet
meet changes.
Just one thing
within the industry.
A couple of things still, come up on this same issue that we're talking about. We have had this attempt quite a few times. One of those attempts was Virgin Nigeria. What are the lessons of Virgin Nigeria as a national carrier at the time compared to now? What are the differences? And then what are the lessons from that experience that we must learn from, and else we must not repeat?
Let me make it abundantly clear. Over and over again, I have said it. Virgin Nigeria was not a national carrier. Virgin Nigeria was owned by a threesome, Richard Branson and two Nigerians via UBA and UBA Capital. It was given a cloak of a national carrier. It was never. But those who formed it were properly located in government to give it, to confer to its status what should have been given to other airlines. What was never, a member of Virgin Nigerian teams said to one of us, well, look, I have never seen a country where a private airline is giving so much privileges like your country is giving to Virgin Nigeria. So when people talk about it failed, I say to them, it was a private investment. Under a cloak, it was cocooned. So it's not compared. If you are telling me about IFC attempt to privatize Nigeria Airways, I will take it up. I will take it up and say this is the difference of this thing. No airline that Nigeria should have to have interest. The country has to give a sovereign cover should be set up like Virgin Nigeria. Virgin Nigeria came in. It has no interest in operating any international routes. He has no interest. All he wanted to do is to use it as a feeder airline, feeder to Virgin Atlantic and the distributor airline. That is why Virgin Nigeria started operation to Dubai. He closed. He was not making profit. He couldn't go to America because if the ownership, the equity violated the Open Skies agreements with the US. In London, going to London, he chose Gatwick, left left Heathrow when Nigeria Airways was operating. He used Nigeria Airways slots in Heathrow for its own operation, but took the Virgin Nigeria flights, went to Gatwick, and he was using some of the worst aircraft ever. Please, there's so much that has happened in our industry that if people know, there are people they will come out and call out and say, stand here and let us take a shot at you.
The question
is not the question. But please don't compare Virgin Nigeria with what is happening.
Fine. The question is, what are the lessons that we have learned from that experience? But I'll come to you on that. Well, Dr. Young, you want to respond?
I want to correct some impressions that Mr. Chris has made here. One, Mr. Mustafa Junaid was seconded to the minister's office, and he's still there. And under his watch, he observed what I can call an abuse of process. An abuse of process in the sense that the concession is a three-pronged affair for the airport. One, strategic business outcome is the first leg. Second leg is full business outline. The second leg is outline business case, and the third leg is full business case. Now, the strategic business outcome, which was supposed to be the province of FAN as asset holder, was ignored completely. And they jumped to outline business case, which is what we have, the OBC. No one in the industry has seen the full business case, and yet we are rolling out. That's by the side. Now, the procurement process that led to the concession program we're activating now has very big question marks, and eternal question mark for that matter standing in front of it. One, because it is designed to create a transparent process where people stakeholders, because essentially the idea is to benefit whoever is a stakeholder in the industry. The same mistake is being repeated in the airline PPP we are doing now, because he has not been able to answer the question about funding and financing, which I raised there, which is fundamental. If government comes in with an alternative airline, if you have read the document, government there said that their price penetration will be less than 1/4 of what the current airlines are charging, which is a big threat to the industry. Because of course, government is going to get free accommodation, is going to get free airport landing and parking, is going to get free access to so many things. Now, if you look at what the government is proposing to the international investor who is interested in coming in as a partner to join the government ostensibly in this private venture in airline business, you notice that they have been giving free VAT, free this, more than 5 items for free. So if you look at those cost components and then you match it against what an airline operator here is paying, because you see, most people come to the airport and you hear that they are paying 37, 50,000, 70,000 naira to Abuja. 36%, in fact, nothing less than 33% of those cost components go into tax, tariff, and charges. The airline operator makes little or nothing after removing fuel and all that. So there's no airline business in Nigeria that can boast of making up to 5% from whatever ticket they're selling. 33 to 37% of their cost goes back to the government. Now, if government becomes an actor in the same field of play, the likelihood of killing the other airline operators because they're going to operate free of charge will be higher.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, one thing is sure here that I guess government still needs to do a lot of explaining to people so that at least people can know what the facts are and own the fact. And I'm pretty sure that Mr. Aligwe, you have some responses, but I apologize that we are completely out of time in this conversation. I guess another time will come for us to deal with the issues, and some of them that we need to talk about. For instance, successive governments come up with ideas, and after the next government comes in, that project is torpedoed or suspended, and is discontinued and all of that, and it will seem like that project, lofty initially, became a white, what we call a white elephant project. Gentlemen, I have to thank you very much at this time. Chris Aligbe is an aviation expert. He joined us from our studio in Abuja. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts, your passion for nation this morning, as well as Dr. Daniel Young, who is an aviation consultant. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Sunrise continues after now with something else equally interesting. Do stay with us.